Welcome to the Quetzal y Andrade podcast. Resonance, where we will discuss bass, effects, and life things. Well, there's my first in the moment intro and fade out of a piece called Por la Noche, or Throughout the Night. This is my very first podcast, so I want to thank you all for tuning in and being curious about my recording process, the gear, and motives for recording original music this year in 2025. Let's get started with that. But before I do, let me just check my bass in case I get motivated to... Yeah, we got some volume. We'll be all right. At the beginning of the year, I realized that in April I was going to be 39 and that the following year in 2026 I would be 40. So that reality hit me pretty hard, and quickly decided, you know what, I want to record some original music and leave some vinyls for my kids so that once I'm gone off this earth, they have something to remember me by. They can be nostalgic when they want to be and tune in and remember, hey, Dad used to work on this stuff. We used to hear this stuff growing up. And so that motive to be creative and original just didn't hit me lightly. And so I started recording with a very easy method. I have a Zoom R4. It's an awesome little recorder that's battery powered or USB-C powered, and it's the coolest thing ever. It's about $200, and you can bounce as many tracks as you want over and over, 4 at a time at the most. And again, I could sales pitch this device forever because it's the coolest thing, I think, that has enabled me to create, record, and share the music out there. Anyway, it has effects, it has EQ, it has compression, it has 2 mic inputs or, stereo instrument inputs. Obviously, your headphone out, and again, super portable and just a great way to be creative without having to have a laptop or, again, be a slave yet again to your phone or tablet, something with a screen, right? So the first album is called First Steps. A little cliche, but definitely my first attempt at being creative after not having been for about 15-20 years. That whole outlet of being creative was dormant, was shut, was not explored. It was not a priority. As much as I love being a gigging musician, full-time music teacher, the every Sunday musician, year in and year out, I decided to write this first song called First Steps. And of course, let's pick some chords and let's loop that, because I love having a looper pedal and being able to just run with an idea and build upon it and see where it goes, right? Without having any too preconceived notions of how it should sound or what will actually happen. Whether it's the bass line underneath or the melody on top. Like, hey, let's take some chords, lay them down, and then we'll build around that. So here's basically the chords, the first steps. And then repeats back to 1. And of course, with that unorthodox, odd phrasing of 5, right? 5 measures before it repeats again, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not measures, beats, I guess, if you want to think about it in beats, unless you're thinking twice as fast, counting-wise. But anyway, that phrasing of 5, it just, for some reason, felt natural to me, and so I ran with that. And let me just play a piece of the melody, right? Wow, I'm not even in here. Okay, let me do those chords again, but with the actual bass resonating. First timer, right? So that's looping, and then eventually the melody comes in. And you get an idea of, some of the lighthearted felt bounciness to it. Childlike, right? Infant-like, first steps. There's something about that melody and the way it bounces off the chords that really did seem like a First Steps title appropriateness. But motive-wise and trying to connect with my kids and family, definitely it makes me think about my kids, right? They are they are such a huge part of my life, a huge part of my heart. I have three. My oldest 9, Mateo. My 5-year-old baby girl in the middle, she's 5, Analia. And my little guy, 3 years old, Eliseo. And their first steps and continued steps are always being watched and love them dearly. So again, First Steps is very, very child, my kids oriented, or that's a huge motive for titling it as such, not just for my own personal music endeavor, but yes, First Steps. That's what's up. And immediately followed by, on that First Steps album, track number 2 is Los Retoños. And many times we call, little ones in Spanish Los Retoños, or they can be referenced as such, with the idea that they are just little flower buds, right? They're just starting, they're just growing. And so that's why I title it, and it's a piece that I actually wrote for my baby girl after she was born. And I'm not going to continue on, but I want to talk about it. At first, I thought, okay, I'll record this piece, and then I ended up taking it to a different key. Right? And yet again, even after that, after the second cycle through it, right, transposing it yet a third time, I really felt that now this piece became something to identify and connect my thoughts and heart to all 3 of my kids. So that's why I called it Los Retoños, and not just, something specifically for Analia. And I really feel like at the end of Los Retoños, it slows down and ends up being like a heartfelt slowing down realization that our third kid is our last kid we will ever have. And so you kind of like slow down and want to savor that moment just a little bit longer, because you'll never experience it again. And so if you listen to the music, I hope you are able to feel that, right? Or at least it now makes sense why we're slowing down, not just for some sort of musical reflection or skill or effect, right? Just some sort of effect to go ahead and slow down for no deeper reason, right? The next piece is called Luna on the First Steps album. That's track 3. All of them have loved the moon, especially my little guy, Luna. And so when I wrote this, I was like, man, a lot of my music sounds a little bit ambient, and with the effects that I throw in, I think it definitely can encourage that kind of vision, right, of space, of the galaxies, and the endless universe. So Luna has a bit crusher effect that it starts with, and I love bit crusher effect, right? The one that I use on my pedal board for the most part is the Autobit Junior by Maris, and I love that pedal. Anyway, that's the bit crusher effect that I use on Luna, and I end up adding some sort of OC2-ish effect that I made on my Ampero 2 stomp, and use that for the bass line, and then just built melody around that, and check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. But the problem with Luna, like the endless universe, is somehow there was a glitch in uploading it to my computer, or I don't know what I did where at what point, that Luna keeps playing after the 2.5 minutes that I had hoped it would pretty much end at, and it ended up repeating, circulating, and just continuing on, and then somehow spitting back some other portion that was recorded over it, and slightly off. If you listen to I am fine not trying to make it seem like Luna was a perfect take or track, but it was one of those things where I was like, wow, this thing really extended long. And I guess the endless universe, right, was trying to be known through this track. So Luna, it's a really good track. One of my favorites to play live. This is one we do frequently with my original trio called Andromeda Azul Trio. And yeah, it's number 3 on the album. Next track is called Big Picture, and again, life, so many things, nuances, and yet we still have to, or should, look at the bigger picture, right? What's really important, what it all kind of comes down to, and so that's why there's a tremolo effect on the beginning chords or harmony loop part that I end up recording, right? Obviously no tremolo here. I don't have my effects pedals plugged in. And then I add a bass line on top of that, or underneath that, right? And then the melody comes in eventually, or some sort of riff, kind of like prelude melody. But anyway, big picture, right? It still very much makes me think of family photos, family pictures, and the meaning of life, right? The love that we're meant to share amongst our family, friends, and music, right? Where would we be without music, right? Especially for us musicians. The next track is called Sometimes, and I won't get into that too much other than sometimes things happen, right? And I called it that because if for some reason this was an interesting and difficult track to continue and lay down. At some point I felt like not quite as motivated as the rest, but I persisted. I just kept going at it without spending too much time on it and thinking, okay, well, this is what came out. This is the real me, right? Sometimes we are who we are. We can only provide what we have, right? In any given situation, including music. And so I call it Sometimes, but I end up really enjoying this tune live with the trio, and it's on there, right? It's as nothing was really discarded this year. I think there's like one track I did not actually put out there out of the 13 albums that have been recorded this year. And so it's one of those things where I wanted to be transparent about the music, sharing it as it came, right? As it was created. Like flavor of the day, music of the day, bass ideas of the day. Here they are. Moving on, ondas, or like vibe, if you will, in Spanish, or vibes, ondas. It's a pretty cool piece. I kind of felt it was very waves, ocean, kind of a vibe kind of thing, but instead of calling it olas, I decided to call it ondas, right? Olas would be waves in Spanish, but ondas is it's a fun piece. In this track, I think it's super cool because there's a Walrus Audio Fable pedal that I use, and by the end of it, it sounds very steel drum-ish, right? It sounds very much like a steel pan, because of the way I'm sustaining some of the notes and whatnot, and how they layer, or kind of the delay sits on top of the held note and everything. It's something that a couple of people actually brought up to me, not just me and my own thinking. They're like, yeah, it sounds very steel pan like. I'm like, that's awesome. I was in a steel pan band in high school. I even have a friend that has a steel pan, and we used to gig out after high school. And so it's one of those things where the steel pan is a very, very cool instrument, and not quite commonly, used or acquired by local musicians. So the fact that there was some connection to that on this piece definitely hits me a little different than to somebody that maybe has never heard a steel pan or has seen one or has been in a band with another musician that actually owns one. The next piece is called Sundown. Yeah, it's a chill vibe. I really like this one. Do I remember the melody to that? I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, it's been a while. See, straight up, once you record 118 tunes in a year without shedding some of the stuff, you're gonna forget some of the stuff, placements, and I could literally just do homework on my own tunes and not get any sleep because it's quite the bottomless pit. Anyway, Sundown, very cool piece. Again, all these tracks have a loop at the beginning, which then I build a bass line underneath and then a melody on top, as I can, right, with this little recorder. And with being a family man, being a full-time teacher, a gigging musician, it's hard to squeeze in time to record at least larger portions, right? So I just come in and I lay things down as I'm able. And so that little Zoom R4 recorder is definitely one of those things that facilitates, right, the recording process. I can take it on the go, listen to some stuff, reflect upon what's been laid down or what to do next while I'm driving, because it's portable. It's battery powered, so you're not worrying having to be like plugged in all the time to some sort of power source. Moving on, figure 8. Number 8 was my daughter's favorite number for a very long time. I'm not sure that it still is, almost a year later, but it's track 8, and so that's why I called it figure 8. You know, with the idea of loops being involved in this piece and much of the pieces that I record, and I do think of the fact that figure 8s sometimes bring up this image of ice skating and a memory of seeing my wife holding my kids' hands on an ice rink, right, and just, you know, having this new life experience and being able to witness that. And so figure 8 is called figure 8 for that reason. It starts off with an OC2 kind of bass line, and it sounds kind of heavy and everything, but the lamellae isn't all that aggressive compared to how the bass line starts. Finally, Exit Here is the last track on First Steps album, and you know, how original, right? Exit Here, it's almost like me just trying to be a dad and being practical and saying, all right, this is it. This is where we're getting off on this first venture, recording-wise, track-wise. And interestingly enough, this was the natural order of the pieces recorded. And so that last track was recorded last, and Exit Here I felt was appropriate sound and title for how to end this first album. Let's see how much time. Wow, 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Wow. I'm thinking 25-minute to 30-minute podcasts. Let's see if I can stretch this out a little longer. But again, this is the First Steps album and first podcast I've ever done. Definitely want to talk about gear, recording processes, and again, the meaning and motives for tracks and albums and all things original, right? Original music. The cool thing about this new music venture is that by February, I had 2.5 albums recorded, each being 9 tracks long, about 2.5 minutes each. The idea that, you know, I'm trying to get things laid down, cool ideas that can be enjoyed, and I'm not trying to write epics. I'm not trying to record, you know, crazy long jam sessions or anything like that. It's just me and how I can work at my own pace and feel accomplished. And so by February, 2.5 albums, I was like, wow, I do feel accomplished. And this momentum, this intrinsic motivation to record and just keep being creative, I don't see myself slowing down. And so I decided to upload the music on DistroKid, right, and have it dispersed to all the music streaming platforms. And I ended up sharing this fact and this venture on Instagram, and it was very well received by many people, many friends. And as a result of releasing original music, and I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, is that some new friendships have definitely grown, right, come about because of inquiry on the music, the gear, bass, you name it, and the genuine desire to connect with another human being, right, that is also juggling life and music and in most cases, yes, the bass. And so it's a very cool thing to be able to connect with another human being, not just about your own music material, but hopefully to be inspiring for their own creative opportunities. I think ultimately, if you're listening to this, if you are enjoying any of my music, I hope that you find yourself with the ability or the power and desire, right, to go ahead and express your own musical ideas. It's again a dream that I had not really envisioned. It was like maybe a sliver of a thought, right, when I started recording. After a few albums, I was like, well, this stuff would be cool to be performed live. And in talking to a couple of friends, I was like, well, it would be really cool to push this further into the jazz realm of things and be able to make this a trio with an alto sax or some sort of sax playing the melodies, myself on bass doing the effects, harmonic accompaniment type of thing with loops and whatnot, and then a drummer to just kick it up a notch sonically, rhythmically, and be able to just solo between the three of us and renovate, innovate the music that has already been created, right? If you ask me, these are glorified demos, right, that have been pushed out there, and ultimately I would love for them to be performed on a whole nother level, right? Just flip them upside down if needed, if we desire, right, and be able to not just play the track as is, right? I want people to go ahead and be creative and translate some of this music to how they feel is best through their own instrument. And I've been super blessed. We've been super blessed, those of us in the trio, to be able to do several original music shows this year, right? Playing this music with Andromeda Azul Trio, and people receiving it very well. I mean, I can't express how grateful I am to be able to do something that's very revealing, right? Very transparent, very personal, and for people to go ahead and still affirm that what they're hearing, what you've done, is worth listening to. It's worth celebrating. And again, I think ultimately, if we're truthful, honest, with our music, if we are being who we are, right, not always trying to sound like the next higher level musician that we aspire to be or admire, I think people will still be able to hear you and respect you for your creativity, your ideas, and your performance. Again, this has been the first podcast. I'm running out of wind, losing wind in my sails, but I'm super excited that there's this first attempt at sharing my ideas, my thoughts, my gear, and I'll talk more about gear for sure. The approach to layering effects, and even, if you will, the production part of it, because I'm not one to try to do any real post-production type of things. No DAW. All these recordings, all these albums have been DAW-less. It's all been through the Zoom R4. And again, even this podcast will not be edited. So as soon as I end up playing the outro music, it's going to be what it is, right? It's going to be faded out, and there will be no editing. It'll just be uploaded. And again, trying to simplify things in a manner that I'm able to go ahead and maximize music output, and connection with you all. So thank you for tuning in. I'm super excited for the future podcasts that will not just explain albums, but again, weekend gigs, right? The momentum of being a musician, week in, week out, and I hope you tune in. So stay tuned. Have a great one.